let me say this then. But with that being said, there is a good thing that could come out of this, though. If Elon wants to put his money, his free speech platform, behind ideas and behind frustration, he could get, whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, you could get those candidates to listen and say, okay, this guy's raising some money. He's causing some problems. I run spoiler campaigns all the time because I don't like candidates who sit there in the establishment and think they can't be beaten. And so I like to find candidates that can beat them. And if we can't win, at least we can change the narrative. I think what Elon's going to do here is change the narrative. And I think that's good for America. Whether or not it's going to have an impact in 2026, I'm highly doubtful. I don't think it'll ever have an impact in a national election like a presidential election. But that being said, there is definitely a lot of discussion right now on this issue. But yeah, I wouldn't even go as far as suggesting that he can even affect the midterms because candidates are already filing. I mean, we're in the midterm, race right now. You can't just go, oh yeah, I'm just going to join this other party. You could do it. You could skip the primary. You're not going to get any vote. And that's my thought on that.
So let me go. So, let me go to, Bill, and I always joke about this, I feel like in the Mario space, we have the most amount of libertarian voices in any political speech I've ever been, much more so than cable news and any other social media. And that's something that I see a lot here is a lot of from the libertarian perspective in the Libertarian Party. So Bill, let me, as from your experience, right? What do you think from a libertarian perspective, is it something that is feasible that Elon Musk, in this short duration from time up to the 2026 election, can he mount a successful political campaign, or is it too little too late? Or does he have the money to really, in a short time, put a candidate and make hurt either for the Republicans or the Democrats?
Well, I think that he might be able to recruit some people. There's still plenty of time for people to get on the ballots for the 2026 midterms. I think that it's probably unlikely that, he could form a PAC, I suppose, and promise some major donations to people who are, let's say, want to address the entitlement crisis. I assume that he wants a smaller government, that he objects to the spending provisions of the bill, the big beautiful bill that just passed. I don't think he's going to change much in terms of the way that who gets elected ultimately to legislatures around the nation, but I think he could certainly recruit some candidates and fund some candidates who could get significant non-trivial percentages of the vote in the 2026 midterm election. I would urge him not just to do that, but to actually work to change the sort of the structure of U.S. politics, to support perhaps changes to the electoral system, to promote the idea perhaps of proportional representation in the United States. I think that if he were to work to try to change the sort of the foundational rules of the United States, he would probably have a greater long-term impact doing that than simply starting a political party and not trying to change the U.S. political system as it is.
We had a couple of guests just join us, so I do want to give them the opportunity to also speak and give their initial reaction. So I'm going to go. We have both Jess and Grant. So I'm going to go first to Jess. We went around the room for everybody's initial reactions on Elon Musk launching this new political party, filing the paperwork to do it. So what's your reaction? Do you think this is something that can change American political history, or is this going to be another failed project of trying to, enter into American politics?
Well, it's nice to actually see you, Sid, and it's nice to see you guys. And I'm learning how to do this. I have a normal setup, so this is my normal setup. I'll be sure I'm ready for the future. So as far as this goes, look, it's appropriate you have a couple of LP people here because I've talked about it on a couple of spaces. I think the LP is a good example of why this is an extremely difficult thing to try and do any third-party candidacy. Actually, from a purely political perspective, putting aside my own feelings, objectively, if you wanted to build a huge independent movement in American politics, you'd probably want somebody that's really truly a centrist, right? That could actually pull from both sides. Elon can't pull really from both sides. I mean, his approval among Democrats is down at the floor. You might want somebody like maybe Howard Schultz, maybe. I mean, you'd think theoretically somebody like Mark Cuban, although I think Cuban probably isn't liked enough among Republicans. And you have just this basic issue that, over time, many third-party candidacies have run into. Really, Ross Perot in '92 is the only one that got relatively close, and Perot for a variety of reasons, including the fact that he suspended his candidacy when he was actually on top of the polls, interestingly, but he might have been able to get a little bit closer. He didn't crack, I don't think, like 20, 21%, right? Right around there. And so the fundamental issue is just the way the system works. I mean, if you go to these states that are relatively open ballot access states, you still run into the problem of inertia, because in those states you have, okay, let's say you can just deal with all the signatures, that's not a problem. You've still got people that are used to voting for one of the two major parties. In recent political history, the only candidate outside of New England that I can think of that has successfully been elected to Congress as an independent, he was already in the Congress as a Democrat, is a guy named Virgil Goode of Virginia. That's the only one that comes to mind. But the LP, of course, is very well aware of this. Guys like Aubrey Dunn in New Mexico, he's changed while he was in office. Of course, Justin Amash did. So I think it's just a real challenge that there's not a lot of recent history to substantiate this. And further, I hate to say, because the overall idea I think is interesting. I'm of course a very committed Republican, but you also have a lot of history going way back that doesn't really substantiate this either. Teddy Roosevelt tried to create the Bull Moose Party, so he could run for president again. And there was kind of this brief enthusiasm, all right, the Bull Moose Party, and that was around when Eugene Debs also was running on a progressive or socialist line. Unfortunately, for both of them, those were unsuccessful third party type experiments. So I think it's just extremely difficult to do any of this. And I think my basic guess here is that what's going to end up happening, I may be wrong, I think that Elon's going to end up pulling back a little bit from the idea of running a truly third party and more towards a supportive role. The best example of that actually is a party, but it's the Conservative Party of New York. No one has won gubernatorial races in New York or mayor of New York City or anything as a Republican without the support of the Conservative Party of New York. And there have been a handful of folks that actually have won office outright as conservatives. Most notably was William F. Buckley's brother, later federal judge James Buckley, actually was elected as a senator on the conservative line alone over the Republican and the Democrat, and that was in like 1972, 74. So that might actually be a role that Elon's America Party could play, but I don't really see the pure third party route being a terribly effective one, to be honest.
So let me go straight to Grant. Do you agree, disagree with what just laid out? Do you think this is something that's bound to fail, or do you think, Grant, that this actually is different because, let's be real, Elon Musk has the resources to make this successful?
Well, I think we have to define what success and what failure could be. If it's winning a couple seats, putting maybe two more Thomas Masseys in the House of Representatives, I think that's possible. But I don't think it's possible to compete with the Republicans or Democrats by and large. I think the Libertarian Party, this last election, showed how you can leverage third party 1%, 2%, 3% of voters by having Trump show up to the Libertarian Party convention and extract concessions out of them. Like, hey, pardon Ross Ulbricht, or we're not going to vote for you. So if the party is going to be targeted and focused in that regard, the America Party, I think there can be some success, but I don't think that it's going to be able to compete right away with the Republicans and Democrats.
Grant, you know what? I apologize for interrupting you. You are coming a little bit broken on our end. I don't know if you can maybe try to reset your connection, something like that, because your audio is coming in broken. I see. Let me know if you can fix it, and then we'll come right back at you. Okay, so we do have Mike and Clint have also joined us. So Mike, let me go to you. I want to see your initial reaction, and then we'll go to Clint afterwards. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, believe it or not, I usually don't get paid for advising Republicans, but from a Democratic perspective, we'll be actually very excited for Elon Musk to start America's first party, because we think mainly, we don't see him peeling off a lot of Democratic voters, but what he'll definitely will do is he will split the Republican vote, and he'll definitely peel off the One thing about Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, and this is not a Donald Trump bashing session, but he did an amazing job of building a coalition. You have Latinos for Trump, you have blacks for Trump. He pulled in a lot of the libertarian voters. A lot of those voters now, due to various policies, and we can debate later on whether they were successful or not, they feel as though that they were used for their vote. They feel played, and now they don't kind of know where to go. And I think that Elon Musk will pull a lot of those votes away from the Republican Party, basically splitting it into two, or perhaps splitting it into two different pieces, which will make a Republican victory in the future very, very uncertain. One thing that they did very good with this very large bill that they passed was they made some of the most popular pieces are not going to be enacted until right after the midterms. So a lot of people won't feel this pain until the midterms are over. However, one of the most popular pieces of the legislation, which is the no tax on tips, expires in 28. So they left the tax in the tax. They made the tax cuts permanent for the billionaire class, but for the working class, they made it expire in 2028. And I think that's when the next presidential election, if Elon Musk is successful with starting this party, which is a very difficult lift, I think that'll be very good news for the Democrats.
Yeah, I'm. How are my levels? Okay.
You're perfect, Clint. Please go ahead, and then I'll go to TJ. Go ahead, Clint.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would like to see a viable third party in this country, one that has a chance at federal elections. The Libertarian Party, which I'm a member of, has not demonstrated the capacity to win those elections. Elon, with his war chest, seems as if he could potentially do so. However, as Stephen Nikela knows full well, it'll take him a decade probably to get, ballot access and the full infrastructure to be a viable third party. Will he demonstrate the level of commitment necessary to get there? I would say probably not. And for that reason, I think that it would be far more prudent were he to fund those resources or allocate those resources towards primary campaigns against the worst in the GOP. So I think he's making a mistake. I think it's based off of vengeance and spitefulness because all of his efforts with Doge were for naught. And he's taken the warpath, which I kind of respect, if I'm being honest.
TJ, so initial reaction of President Trump, of Elon Musk announcing this new political party, filing it with the FCC. General question is for you: do you think this is something that can transform American politics, or is this something that you think is going to amount to nothing?
I think it's going to have an impact, but I don't think it's going to have the impact that Elon wants it to have. I mean, as Clint, Stephen especially know, third parties have an extreme uphill battle. And that's one of those things is that I do think Musk is doing this out of frustration with the big, beautiful bill, going after Congressman Thomas Massie, issues along those lines. Those are kind of the straws that broke the camel's back. That being said, the question is, do you want to make a point or do you want to make an impact? And I think if Musk wanted to make an impact, he would do what he said he was going to do in one of his tweets where he said that he would focus on primary elections. And that's something that I would say would actually be a really good way to make an impact. I can just think about elections here in Kentucky. We have had state representatives who have won their elections by one vote. Imagine being an individual who didn't vote in that election and your guy wasn't the one who got the one deciding vote. For me, I think that an America caucus is a much better idea than an America party because it has all of those logistical issues. 1, ballot access. 2, just getting it off the ground. 3, you're kind of fighting against human nature, right? It's a whole lot easier to get people because I'm thinking about what the main platform of an America party is. Fiscal responsibility, things on those lines. That's actually what Republicans campaign on. That's what I campaigned on. That's at least how I hope I have voted in this past session. We'll really see if I hold true to that promise next year when we have a budget session in Kentucky. And I hope to show that I wasn't joking around when I said that I'm committed to fiscal responsibility and sanity. But for me, I feel like if you really wanted accountability that Musk wants, using those resources toward recruiting primary challengers and putting in Republicans who actually mean what they say, I think that's a much better way of doing it.
So, man, there's so much because, I guess what I'm getting at, because I know we've all done these spaces. I recognize a lot of your voice, and as Jess said, it's good to put faces to people's voices that I've heard throughout the years now doing this. But there's kind of this consensus, and I'll go to you, Stephen, quickly for this. What I'm getting at is, if you're a Republican, you're trying to hope that that Elon creates a caucus within the Republican Party and primaries people. Mike, kind of from a Democrat, more liberal perspective, is like, hey, have at it. But Stephen, let me go to you. It's, why wouldn't Elon, though, because to kind of pivot off what T just said, why wouldn't Elon, though, create a political party of his own? Because he invested $300 million plus. He basically sacrificed his image. Let's be real. I mean, Tesla was a liberal dream, right? I mean, prior to the 2024 election, prior to all this, if you were a liberal, and you cared about climate change, you cared about all that, you went with Tesla. You thought Elon Musk was a proof of that you can go green and revolutionize America and be all this. And Elon Musk sacrifices all that, sacrifices his business, sacrifices political capital and money, goes into the Trump administration to institute change. And with the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, everything he advocated, everything he wanted was thrown aside. So why wouldn't Elon create his own political party?
No, I think you're absolutely right. Here's a man who spent $250 million getting Donald Trump and Republicans elected. He went in gung-ho over